Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News and another pre-record. No, I'm kidding. I was going.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. We're here. Hey, Chewy, how are you, man?
I am good, Pat. I am freezing, but I am good.
Yeah, people know we weren't here last night. We were off with the NZEI, and here's something that Chewy hasn't heard. Chewy, because we were down in Invercargill for the afternoon speaking on a panel for the NZEI, and Chewy came back last night. I stayed overnight, and this is a little bit of what you missed, Chewy. That was so good. We were down. You go.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, I could tell that they were ramping up for probably a pretty full-on evening of singing and taking the piss out of each other.
So we'll give you a little bit of background as to what we did later, because we've got Gareth Hughes coming up. He's in the waiting room there. But someone from the NZEI, I don't know, who knows why, asked us to come down and speak on a panel at an NZEI conference. It was great fun, though, and a real honour, actually, to be asked to go down there. Then there was a feast, hangi, and a massive feast afterwards. Performances by a couple of haka groups. The kids were performing for us. And then Chewy left to come back to Dunedin, and we stayed overnight. In the evening, they had, so it's a bunch of NZEI groups from around the country having to do forced performances. And it's so funny because that's what they sounded like. They all sounded amazing. And I kind of go, if this is forced performance for all these teachers and stuff performing, imagine what actual like practiced and well thought out performance would be. It would be off the chain. So yeah, so that's what we were up to yesterday. We'll tell you all about that in a wee while. It was fun, man. And yeah, lots going on tonight, actually. We want to talk a little bit about 3 News, the new stuff product. I mean, you celebrate your victories, don't you, Chewy? They're jumping up and down going, yahoo! But I'm like, I've got this memory, not to be a neg, but I've got this memory of spin-off TV on, was it on Friday nights? And they were like, yahoo! On week 1. And by week 10, they were drawing, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 viewers a night. And it had been moved from 10 to like 11:30 or something like that. So I think it's awesome that we've got another news agency here, but I'm sort of the opinion, Chewy, that you under promise and over deliver. And when you get out there and you pop the champagne corks on day 1, what happens on day 60 when maybe people have gone, oh yeah, we gave them a try, but we're going to go back to TVNZ. You know, yes, celebrate your victory, celebrate being there. I wouldn't be focusing quite so much on the numbers quite yet. Just my thoughts. Just my thoughts.
Yeah.
So I'll have a bit of a look
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, you know, it's I don't want to be too disparaging because I'm glad they're there. And look, they're doing good work. They had an exclusive tonight that we're going to talk about actually as a part of talking about what they're doing. But it just looks like one step above the kind of green screen filter on your Zoom behind them. A little bit. You know, you can see the kind of, I mean, not the budget for a big set, got it, fine. I'm like, you know, what do you do if you haven't got the big budget for a big set? Do you try and pretend to have a big set using AI and using computer generation? Or do you just go, we haven't got a big budget for a big set, so we just, you know, we make what we've got work as we look at the faux cabin behind me. But the faux cabin is, you know, it's really there. It's there.
That's real wood, people.
It's real wood, people. Anyway, look, no, I don't want to be too negative about it, but we'll see. And also, Simeon Brown coming out today. It's hard to say he's not going to take any advice, but it seems he's pretty grumpy with what the Greens have done, telling all their supporters to submit against the speed limit, reinstating the speed limits and changeable ones around schools. But then he's instructing all his people to vote for it. And it's almost like he's saying the submissions don't matter. We're just going to do what we're going to do. I might be being a bit harsh. We'll go through the story when we get to that more, and we'll check it all out. I'll tell you what we're going to do to start with. We're going to welcome to the show Director of Wellbeing Economy Alliance Aotearoa, former Aotearoa New Zealand Green Party MP Gareth Hughes. Gareth, good evening to you.
Yeah, kia ora korua, gents.
How are you, man? Doing well? Since
well.
leaving, how dare you leave Dunedin? I mean, what happened? Gosh, left Dunedin, left us all abandoned.
Yeah, I could have stayed down there for a bit longer, but my whānau was pretty keen to get back to Poneke, Wellington, and we spent 3 years down there, and we actually loved it. And the thing I miss is I actually swam in the sea for like 4 months straight. The last summer we were there, haven't swum in the sea since.
Oh wow! All right, cool. Hey, well, listen, we've got you on for a couple of reasons. Obviously, you were. Well, you call yourself kind of an independent now. I think I read a story where you've got no party affiliation. Is that as you stand today?
Yeah. So when I helped set up the Wellbeing Economy Alliance Aotearoa, I want to sort of persuade and talk to all parties, and I thought that would be easier if I wasn't a member. But I'm also really enjoying doing a bit of commentary. I sort of noticed a lot of the commentators I noticed were kind of really like Team Blue, Team Red, and wouldn't really acknowledge when their team maybe didn't do the right thing. So I'm trying to just be genuinely independent and say when people do good things and point out when I think they're maybe not.
I think you've been reading the script for Big Hairy News here a little bit, Gareth, from the sounds of things. But you were involved with the Green Party, you were involved with Parliament, and obviously there's big news, especially for our audience. It's unquestionable that our audience is obviously swinging left. It's where we put ourselves pretty clearly. But like yourself, we hopefully play balls and strikes, or call balls and strikes, as they say. But one of the big news stories over the weekend, I think it might have actually cracked on Friday. They always crack on Friday. We don't do a show on Friday, and they always crack, was Darleen Tana. And it's been going over the weekend. So what I think we'll do to start with is we'll just play, it's just 90 seconds of the story off One News tonight, and then want to get your feedback on it. But also, one of the big parts, I know you've been in the media today talking about waka jumping, is to maybe just drill down what this is and should the Greens use it, albeit they haven't wanted to, or haven't actually, no one's ever used it. And historically, the Greens have been very, very anti-waka jumping. So let's just have a look at the story first of all, and then we'll have a chat.
A former worker at the centre of a migrant exploitation case involving former Green MP Darleen Tana says he's been left destroyed. It comes as party co-leader Chloe Swarbrick considers using the waka jumping legislation to force her from Parliament. Political editor Mikey Sherman has developments.
This is Santiago Parma in happier times 2 years ago.
This is my third day here.
Working for Darleen Tana's family e-bike business, unaware of the toll it would take on his life.
It's a lot. Now I am financially destroyed, emotional destroyed, and so tired. And stress, it's a stress to stay in the media.
Today he visited One News wanting to speak out about the MP.
It's quite an interesting thing that they just did. They're just for you media geeks out there like me and Chewy. See how One News actually said he came to us to talk. They wanted to make it very clear that we did not go seeking this scuttlebutt. He came to us. I think that was purposefully written that way to kind of go, he's come to tell his story, take it as you will. Probably because there's still some disagreement between, I guess, Darleen Tana and the Greens as to what the accusations were and weren't, maybe.
She stay in the business. She do the payments. She managed the business.
Darleen Tana refutes all allegations, but having seen the independent report, her former co-leader is furious.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really straight up about the fact that I feel betrayed, to be honest with you.
Darleen Tana has resigned from the Greens, but not from Parliament, leading to talk of what's known as the waka jumping law, allowing a party to request an MP be booted out. It's legislation created by New Zealand First, and Winston Peters says the Greens should use it against Tana.
Who they say should not be there, not fit, well then put it to the test right here, right now, by forcing her to resign.
For the Greens, it's complicated. The party was born after Jeanette Fitzsimons and Rod Donald ditched the alliance, so they hate the waka jumping law.
So there you go. Now, Gareth, maybe we can start. Should we start there, or should we start with talking about Darleen Tana? Why don't we just quickly go over what is the waka jumping law, and is this a place that the Greens could or would use it?
You want to go right back to the start?
Sure. We're here. Yeah. We're waiting. All ears.
Well, I mean, so when we moved elections systems in the 90s to MMP in 96, there was a huge amount. 22 MPs were switching parties in the run up to that. And it was deeply unpopular with the public, right? Because it looked like rats leaving sinking ships and all of that.
Right.
So in the early 2000s, Jim Anderton was the prime driver of it. Winston Peters was a big supporter because he had a whole bunch of MPs defect in the Jenny Shipley, Jim Bolger government. But it was Jim Anderton who really strove to get this made into law, and it became a law in 1999, but it had a sunset clause. It automatically expired in 2005. Back then, and when I was living down south, I wrote a history of the Green Party and a biography of the first co-leader, the late Jeanette Fitzsimons, and I read all the speeches they were going through Parliament at that time, and the Greens were staunch opponents of this Waka jumping. I call it party hopping because why we racialize, Waka jumping and make that a bad thing. So I call it party hopping. They were vocally opposed to it because what they saw it was sort of domineering leaders like Jim Anderton and Winston Peters who wanted to get their way, wanted to dominate the caucuses. And they were opposed to it because it stifles free speech of MPs. We've already got some of the most powerful the most powerful parties in a democracy in the Western world at the moment. There's very little crossing the floor, very little examples of MPs speaking out, and that's exactly what Waka jumping encourages. So Alamein Kopu was the victim of this in, I think, 2003, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. Tariana Turia also faced it when she set up the Māori Party, but it lapsed, right? And then it wasn't until 2018 when Winston Peters got it back in there that the Greens ended up actually voting for it, despite calling it a dead rat. And now we're sort of in this position where the Greens are considering invoking, or at least not ruling it out. But this is after decades of opposition to it and not using it last term with Elizabeth Kirikiri when they had the opportunity.
So it can be used. The question is, will it be used? And as you say, the Greens haven't been a fan of it in the past. I guess a lot of that comes back. Now we go to the full circle to Darleen Tana and what she's done. It's a fascinating part of the political world that someone who has not got an electorate seat can get brought into Parliament on a list, then be, for want of a better word, kicked off that list, and then just become an independent and stay in government. I guess two sides. You want to be able to protect people from not just going, oh, by the way, we don't like you, you're off the list and you're out of Parliament. But this would be the other side of that coin, which seems a bit peculiar as well.
Yeah, and I acknowledge there is another side of the coin. And it's something Jeanette Fitzsimons used to always say. You can't actually legislate for your legislators to have integrity. You have to kind of depend on their conscience and the public pressure. So, look, even if the Greens didn't invoke it and Tana hypothetically stayed as an independent MP, I can't think of a more horrific life that Tana would experience. I saw that with Brendan Horan, who defected from New Zealand First. Recently, we saw Gaurav Sharma from Labour. These are kind of really deeply sad, isolated individuals who kind of don't do anything. And then they get all the flack from the media for taking the salary, but not really doing much. And you can't really achieve much as an independent in the circumstances that, say, Tana or Brendan Horan entered. So, look, I wouldn't wish that lifestyle on my worst enemy.
Yeah. Chewy, we should talk about the actual process as we heard it. I think we were talking last night and you gave a bit of an outline as to what you understood happened and how it happened. Do you want to share it with us all?
So my understanding of the timeline is obviously Greens have been waiting on this report to be generated, and they were very much like, hey, we're going to, in the interest of natural justice, we're just going to let this play out and see what's delivered to us. My understanding is that they got that report on Friday evening. They had a caucus meeting on Saturday morning with Tana there to, I guess, answer it. And then the caucus unanimously decided to remove her from the Green Party. But that leaves the ball in her court of whether she resigns from Parliament. There's been a statement, I don't have it to hand, where she's just basically denying everything and saying that it's just a beat up, and the Greens always had this in mind, that it isn't a full and fair process. And then there's just been statements of like, do the right thing and resign.
So this is part of the statement. In a statement tonight, this is last night, I think, Tana said she'd received a copy of the report on Saturday morning and attended a caucus meeting that day where it was discussed. Quote, "I do not feel that natural justice has been followed during this process, and at Saturday's hui, it seemed clear that a predetermined view had been formed prior to hearing from me." Onwards, she said, "I want to make it clear that I do not accept the findings of the report and believe that it substantially misrepresents the level of my involvement in my husband's business." So just to follow on from what you said, Chewy, that's
and I think another factor of it is, I believe, due to privacy reasons, it's up to her to allow the release of the report to the public. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I've heard, Chewy, that it might have actually been in that report that the Greens are going to release an executive summary, but not the full report. Now, that feels problematic because, as we've always said, maybe you can speak to this, Gareth, the Greens seem to be the most open and transparent group of any lot, the way they do things. And of course, we're all still going to Mr. Lux, and hey, where's that Uffindale report that you promised to give us? So, do you understand what needs to happen to get that released into the public, Mike? Because I'm assuming that, especially because the Greens are standing behind this report so much and using it as the reason for them taking action, they'll want everybody to see it.
Yeah, and this is the problem they're in, right? Is that it's basically a he said, she said situation where the report's contested, but we in the media can't make up our minds independently because we haven't seen it. So I think the Greens historically have always been held to a higher standard because often they are the champions for transparency. And look, I can't remember for sure, but I'm sure they would have been calling for the Uffindale report to be released, or Green members at least. Look, I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't sort of get their ducks in a row and maybe talk to the other individuals mentioned in the executive summary, get their permission weeks when it was shared for consultation initially, to get their permission to issue it publicly at the same time as making this announcement. I think that would have been a lot cleaner, and it would have not been this messy situation we find ourselves in. But this is the situation the Greens find themselves in. So, you know, I'm sure they'll be trying to urge to get the report out sooner rather than later, because it's a real grey area and it's really murky, which means both sides can sort of claim points and make arguments on the back of it. I understand Tana could release it as well. But I guess the other complicating factor is I understand News Talk ZB has a copy of it that it's been leaked to. So it may get out there anyway without sort of any of those privacy protections or redactions if they were ever going to happen. So, yeah, just a little bit messy.
I mean, I wouldn't mind also speaking to, obviously you're not a part of them, but to the Greens in and of themselves and what they'd be going through and feeling at the moment. I mean, you think about this year, you've got James Shaw resigning. You've got the situation with Gorras. You've got the situation with Julianne Genter crossing the floor and screaming, that one. Marama's health diagnosis. Afisa Collins passing, obviously very close to a lot of people. And now, Darleen Tana. I don't know if I've missed any. And what are we? We're halfway through the year. That's all this year. I mean, what will the Greens be going through at the moment, do you think, Gareth, with this on top of all of those things?
Oh, well, it's kind of an annus horribilis, right? So the horror year, the worst year since 2005 when they lost Rod Donald, suddenly hit a disastrous election, lost a bunch of MPs. So, look, I think people are shocked, maybe a little bit rattled. I still have a lot of friends involved, and, people are there for the right reasons because they really believe in, the urgency of the climate crisis and all the problems we see in our society, from homelessness to inequality to child poverty. If I was still there, I'd be deeply frustrated, right? Because that's what motivated me getting action on the really important things and staying on message. And it's been, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or more steps back. It feels like sometimes the whole year. So I'm sure they're trying to sort of huddle together and be more of a team. This is where you really need to lean on your colleagues and back each other. But they would have been hoping this report, the evidence, which we haven't seen yet, would have been so compelling that it would have been quite a clean break, and they could have, at the mid-year, had a fresh start for the rest of the year. But unfortunately, this horror year continues.
Chewy, you said yesterday, actually, as a part of our panel, I think, talked about the government might be front-loading all this shitty legislation to get it out of the way. I mean, could we say the same for the Greens? All this bad luck is front-loading at this end of the election cycle to maybe give them a great run through to the, whatever it is, 2026. I was thinking, Chewy.
I think the difference between those two examples is I think the government might be purposefully doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a nightmare. I mean, it's just so frustrating on so many points of view. Like I've commented before, because of the Green Party processes and that sort of thing, and their transparency, in contrast to how the other parties run. Yes, it's something good and it's something admirable, but it just, people don't have a frame of reference for it, and so it seems really messy. And yeah, for a lot of people, it is just one more thing going wrong for the Greens. And like, it's another woman, and it's another brown woman, and it's just like, it's so frustrating. I just want better things. Like I see in the chat someone going, well, who's next on the Green Party list? Who is Tana keeping out that could be really good? And I just think if this is just going to be ego of I'm not going, out of spite, which is a very natural human reaction to being called out on something. No, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to sit in the house.
Might not just be ego, it might be financial. Yeah.
And that makes it very uncomfortable, because there'll be a lot of Green voters out there that are going, no, I did not vote for this. I did not vote for you. You don't have a mandate from me. I'm furious at you. I think you're right. She's going to be running a hell of a gauntlet.
Here's a question, Gareth. The party faithful, the Green Party faithful, the ones that turn up to the meetings, the ones that cast votes in the leadership, how will they be reacting how it's currently being handled? You know, because that base of supporters, not the MPs, the people who are part of the party, what will they be thinking right now, do you think? Will they be a bit pissed with the party for not having a stronger hand, or are they kind of keeping the cope opera and going, we're not getting involved with waka jumping, etc.?
Well, I'm a few years out of Parliament and a few years out of the party, so I can't say for sure what's going on, but I imagine
What's your vibe?
What's your vibe? I imagine, on one sense, you can just feel, viscerally the anger and the fury of the betrayal that Chloe Swarbrick is just sort of emanating in her media interviews. I mean, it's pretty incredible that we've kind of got the situation where the leader is, through the media, calling on a former colleague to resign from Parliament. Pretty incredible stuff. I imagine there's deep anger amongst the party, because you're right. A seat in Parliament is an incredible privilege, an incredible space where you can make real change in the world. Like, it's one of the great privileges of my life to spend a decade there, and I'm proud of the good I did. And it's a valuable bit of real estate, and there's only 120 odd of them. So it's taking a seat that potentially someone could make more good in the world. Remember also, there's a huge young cohort in the Green Party that don't remember the big debates of the 2000s with Winston Peters, and Jim Anderson might be a bit of a footnote in history now. You've got to remember that the Greens were founded by Jeanette Fitzsimons and Rod Donald, who are Green Party members of the Alliance grouping of parties, leaving the Alliance because of Jim Anderson's domineering position, not having Green policies in it. They thought they would be better on their own two legs, and they took that risk, and they did it. But had the waka jumping legislation been enforced then, there might not be a Green Party in New Zealand. And it's an incredible fact, I think a bit of an indictment of our Parliament. There's not a single party in Parliament today, or have been in the MMP environment, that didn't have MPs in a previous party. No new party has entered Parliament under its own steam without existing MPs in other parties. So every party has a bit of this history, either from it or to it. And so that might be something that younger members aren't aware of. So, they might be, calling for blood at the moment, wanting a bit of utu, but I would be, just reminding the party of the history, their position. James Shaw, in the last term of Parliament, actually wrote to the party executive, I understand, saying that we would not be invoking this legislation if we had the chance. So there's a few, hurdles to cross if they want to invoke it. But I still return to that point I made before. This is going to be a miserable experience for an independent MP. She might, be able to stick around, but she's going to be hounded by the media, the public as well. It wouldn't be a pleasant existence.
Yeah. All right. Hey, thanks for jumping in and joining us tonight. You said, as you were talking there, about why you were an MP and a passion for what you're doing. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you're doing, the new aspect of your life? Because that passion that you had for doing good and for what you were trying to achieve as an MP seems to have followed you into the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. Explain to us what it is and you know what you're all about.
Yeah, well, I guess long story short, while I'm involved, is that it's a direct consequence of being in politics for so long. So I've spent a quarter century now trying to make good change with organisations like Greenpeace and Parliament, other organisations I've been part of. And I've sort of reflected when I was living on the island down south that a lot of my work's been really focused downstream, right, on the symptoms: child poverty, climate change, poor housing. What's causing it? These aren't just sort of accidents. They're actually design choices, right, from the economic system that we see it. So that was something I found in politics. There was very little space to think long term, to think systemically, to actually analyze why things are happening in our society. So I teamed up with an amazing group of people from around the world who believe we need to reshape our economic systems to deliver good things by default, deliver them by design, and we kind of need to reshape our economic system. Economics has always changed. It changed in the 1930s with the welfare state, changed 40 years ago with neoliberalism. We've got way different challenges today that we need to respond to, like, planetary collapse and the climate breakdown. We need to make sure that we're, getting those better outcomes. So in New Zealand, we're like a little think tank, little do tank. We're part of the global organization. We've got some amazing ambassadors like Kate Rowth, Tim Jackson, Jason Hickel, global economic thought leaders. And here we focus on, research, policy, advice, trying to change the story on the economy. So last winter, I literally drove around the country in a camper van, talking to ordinary folks about what their aspirations were for the economy. And that was super inspiring for me, because what I heard is that ordinary Kiwis in towns and big cities, rural, urban, they kind of want the same stuff, right? They want an economy that looks after people, where people get a fair go, probably thinks intergenerationally and of future generations. There was a lot of the treaty principles which came out quite strongly. But they're not seeing that expressed in our current economy. So that gives me hope that if we just get ordinary, human values expressed, we'll get better outcomes. And then we do things like conferences and events and, visiting speakers. So yeah, we're a T3T-based movement that's trying to do this big, audacious goal to redesign the economic system. Heaps of people are talking about it. We all sort of know that there are cracks in this current system. They're kind of like giant chasms now. And you probably saw that Ipsos poll that came out earlier this year that 2/3 of Kiwis think the economy's rigged and is broken and geared for corporate interest. And maybe the last thing I'll say is literally this weekend is the 40th anniversary of the 1984 snap election, where we totally redesigned our economy around privatization, corporatization, markets, individualism. That reminds us today that the system's changed before. It can totally change again. It was designed then with some outcomes in mind. It can be redesigned with modern outcomes in mind today. So yeah, people can check out our website if they'd like to get involved with this mahi. I seriously think this is the most important work that I've been doing, because if we get the economy working right, we'll solve so many problems.
Excellent. People want to find out more about you and what you're doing, you guys in general. weall.org, weall.org, and then look for New Zealand. It's technically /hub/New Zealand. I think I just saw
we've got a new website landing next week, so keep an eye out. They can visit weall.org.nz from next week.
There you go, weall.org.nz from next week. And if you get any of those speakers coming through, fire them our way. Love to chat to a few people there, Gareth.
Yeah, cool.
Hey man, thanks so much for coming and joining us. Exciting to see what you're doing, and we'll look forward to keeping an eye on it.
Cool. Ka kite. Good night.
All right, all the best. Thanks, Gareth.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gareth.
Right, should we look at the chats and anything that's going on out there?
Yes, there are a few here. First of all, let's do the lates. Bill B, 2 minutes late, $2.
Oh, lucky you went 45 minutes late then.
Late fee. What did I miss? Also,
nothing. We were just waiting for you, Jackson.
Seymour equals bad. $3.49.
We did nothing until we saw you, Jackson. We were just waiting for you, and then we started.
Tafari says it says how awful and unfavourable ACT and New Zealand First are that Greens are often higher in polls than those two parties combined, despite all of their controversy and I guess bad luck so far. Thank you. And Peter says, I hope Chloe has the support around her that she needs because she's got so much to deal with above and beyond normal politics. It must be stressful. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that Gareth commented is that you can see that Chloe is seething at this betrayal. Essentially, and I don't think it's it's not a personal thing or anything like that, but I can only relate to one time that I was running a small team. I thought everyone was pulling in the same direction, that we all believed in the same things, and then found that someone was basically stealing behind my back and that sort of thing, and I took it very personally.
Yeah, I bet.
That it was a betrayal of me. It was a betrayal of everything that everybody was working towards. Why couldn't this person see what we were all trying to achieve? And I would imagine that that's what's ripping through the Green Party at the moment, that there'd be some pretty fired up people.
Excellent. All right. Hey, do you feel like having a bit of chat about what we went through yesterday, what we saw, what we experienced? Because, lovely whānau out there
absolutely. Look,
gave us a chance. They gave us, we had to bring notes from our parents, but because of that, we got a night off and we're able to go and do our thing. Let me just show you, I haven't got any, the people actually, the group that hosted us actually recorded the panel that we were on. And if we get the footage or if we get the audio, we might actually end up just putting it up as a podcast so you can kind of hear what we did. But this was dinner time after it. You can have a look at the group of people there, and also a little bit of the kapa haka going on. It's pretty cool.
I think I had a grin on my face this whole performance.
It was pretty amazing, actually, and it was so welcoming. We should say a huge thanks to Wairangi and to Lisa as well for asking us to come down. Chewy said it at the actual panel, but we talked about before the imposter syndrome that kind of came out. But it was really interesting to be able to talk to people, and I guess the reason we got asked down there, I guess for want of a better explanation, is because of this, because we have conversations here as a couple of like dumbass non-Māori from Dunedin, but hopefully what we're helping and trying to do as buffers is to get a message out there that some people are uptaking. And it's a little bit like, you can always, there's always someone smarter than you. There's always someone dumber than you as well. Like I used to joke with the kids in schools when I was working in schools full of 10-year-olds. I used to go to them. They'd go like, "Oh, Mister, how do you know so much?" And I went, "Well, technically, I only need to be as smart as an 11-year-old to know more about stuff than you. Technically, because you're 10." And it's a bit like that. We can all bring someone along. We can all move someone closer to the enlightenment. And I think, I don't know, I haven't really had this conversation with the whānau who had us down there, but it feels like what we're doing here, one of the things we're doing here is bringing some people along. And we kind of went down to talk about how in our little kind of semi-medicated way, cheers, we're bringing people along and then handing them off to people like Professor Margaret Mutu to actually get them over the line, because we're not going to do that, but to hand them off to someone else. Is that fair, Chewy, way of saying it?
Yeah, like first of all, I do want to comment on the imposter syndrome, because there was a couple of things that really brought that crashing home for me. It is very easy to sit in my room here with a monitor in front of me, looking at Pat, looking at the chat, and looking at the numbers each week, and it's an abstract thing. But when you go into a room like that with that many people and sit there and you're like, oh wow, you get the welcome and I think I commented to someone on that. That's only the third time I've ever been on a morai. So that was sitting there, and then when they introduced the panel, I was like,
Catherine Delahunty is one of them.
Yeah, decades of being in Parliament and being part of the Green Party, talking about treaty issues and education, just an absolutely storied career. and then someone who's working with youth in prison, and again treaty issues and
studying a PhD,
cultural, studying a PhD, and then we've got Pat, an award-winning broadcaster, award-winning podcast, and then
hang on, you're an award-winning podcaster as well. Come on, just be fair. And then well, you have to know, you can't say, and then there's Chewy. Sometimes. Yeah, no, you can't say the insurance. Then there's these two guys who make immature jokes about our bald prime minister. That's kind of that's where we come into the fray.
That is very true. But I mean, you brought this up with a guest from last night's pre-record, right, about the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And to have Xena, warrior princess, tell us that imposter syndrome is something that everybody gets and you just push through. You know what you do when Xena tells you something? You fucking listen.
You do it, or you're in trouble.
And it was very true with a lot of those questions that, like, I remember one of those questions was about the history curriculum and the changes to it and that sort of thing. And I'm not a teacher, I can't speak to that. I've never set policy or anything like that. But all I could think of with that question is I was a kid that was really interested in history, so I spoke to that. And one of the things about having a live talk with that group of people in that setting is they're very vocal when you say something that resonates. And when I was saying something like this, and I just heard, people going, "Kia ora," ripping through the crowd and stuff like that. And I was like, excellent. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about Māori issues on the show, we're two Pākehā guys. And it's like a lot of it is like, Jesus, I hope I'm on the right track here. I hope this is my place to say. And from all of the people that came up to us afterwards, it was exactly what we've talked about when we've talked about buffer. It's like, it's not just Māori pushing for these things. It's not just Māori that think they're important. There are other people that think they're important as well. And it'd be like seeing, like, just when reinforcements arrive, right, at the big crucial big battle of the movie, reinforcements arrive. That's what it must feel like. And I'm not saying that it's Pākehā have got to be there for it to be successful, or Pākehā need to. We don't need to stand in the front. We don't need to stand in the back. We just need to stand shoulder to shoulder, and that's what these guys were working through. I said to my wife Claire on the way back, like, just going to that conference and being there and seeing the reaction, it's just really filled up my cup.
Yeah,
there's
I know
a lot of the stuff that we talk about week in, week out, it drains out my cup. It really does at times. And to see that group of people going, right, what do we do? What's important to us? The kids are important. Cool. Let's focus in on that.
It made me think, I was talking to my partner about it. Like, is when I grow up, I want to be Māori. Or when I come back, I want to come back Māori or something. Just and I preaching to the choir, got it, but this is a little revelation. I was trying to think, what do you have in a European society that can match that community? And about as close as I got was, pardon the pun, but I grew up in it, is the Catholic Church, where you're sort of the Catholic Church that I grew up in, because there's a primary school attached to it, and all the parents and those kids go to that, and it's all kind of one group of people, but it's still not the same. There's nothing like it. That the foundation of those people and that group that we were at last night, the foundation of everything they are, is tied up integrally into the community they're a part of. And we were talking about it, and we're talking about, oh, this group does this for society, and this group does this for society, and they kind of bring everyone on board. And it's like, yeah, but this group we're talking about last night, they do this for themselves. Like why they're teaching their kids is because it's their kids. They're not offering, they are doing this as well, but I'm talking about the community. It's like I was thinking of the examples that we were thinking of, and it's always doing something for someone else in the community and bringing them on board. But they just felt something very different that, through their oral history, through their songs, through their dance, it's them telling the next generation about the previous generation. And then it's them telling the next generation about the previous generation and the previous generation. And it was a real eye-opener. I mean, I've been on Morai lots of times, but just in that moment where we were sitting there, and because they were thanking us for coming, And you went there at the very end, Chewy, but it happened with us as well. Eating this amazing food and having singing.
I was there for the food. I was there for the
having
food.
singing from the front, but then also sporadically this was for the kids, and then a bunch of the parents would just stand, or adults would stand and they'd sing as well. And all of a sudden you had this cacophony of sound all around you. And it's like, it wasn't a performance by the kids for the adults. It was a performance by the kids with the rest of the community. It's like, it just really felt like they weren't putting on something for others. They were continuing their story for themselves. Now, I'm not also saying they don't supply for the community, because they do, but they just really felt like the sense of, and then I think about, like, I mean, I'm Irish and stuff, and maybe back in Ireland in the 1930s when people had to get together more, there was more community, but we're so disjointed in our communities, you know, and not to beat an old horse to death, but yeah, we put our old people in homes. You know, this marae was building apartments for their kaumātua to go to on the marae, and I think they said that handed over 2 sets of keys to the first two, you know, older generation people to live on the marae, to live in the community. They don't get sent off to the retirement village. That's what we do, you know. And it's just, it was like, I just went, I mean, you know, they say you're never too old. It's too old. I'm too old now to make that in my family or my community, because it's 800 years getting to that experience we had on Monday night. It was just flipping awesome. And then they also gave us, Chewy, you've got something pretty cool, but these really cool little thank yous. This is dope as shit. And I said that I would put it straight away up on my bit in my set, so it's going to go up here. Little thank you and a thank you back. And it was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and anytime. I'll be there anytime, in a heartbeat.
I'm going to have to do a video of my one.
Yep. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Mine's
don't
more active. No, I'll show later.
So yeah, so look, that was great. I mean, we probably wrap up on that topic, but the one thing I was going to say, Chewy, it was interesting coming back from Invercargill this morning at 4.5 degrees, seeing that my EV lost 1/3 of its range.
Did you have the heater on?
No, that was when it, like before we got into it, it was down by 1/3. Like that was the range. It was 100%, and it was down by 1/3 before we even started the journey. Still big enough to get back in one hit, but down by 1/3.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I had a different experience, Pat, because mine doesn't have the big battery that yours does. I had to look at my route planner and then worked out that the Gore charger was out of action. So now it was going to be a little bit tight on the margins. Got into Invercargill under 20%, which is a little bit light.
I'm going to do a story. We're going to do a story next with wee boy Simeon. But before we do that, a whole bunch of chats have just come in. Let's get to them now, because we were just talking about that, and then we'll move on. Did you did Tawhiri, or is that another one from Tawhiri? We'll just do it again. Tawhiri for $5. Thank you, sir. It says how awful and unfavourable acting. Oh yeah, we've done that one, but we'll do it again. Thank you again. Belfast child says, all right then, I was 15 minutes late. That was a joke.
The system works.
The system works. Now wait till you're a week late. Angie Sanity. Okay, let's give this a go. Ko Tiro Maori E, my favourite song, Mana Wahine. I'm sure I butchered that 100%. Ian says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to change rooms. Yeah, that's very, very true, Ian. We like saying we like being the dumbest person in the room. It's just kind of the opposite, equal and opposite of that one. And Mr. Arvids wants to know, did you rant at the bush, Chewy?
I didn't mean the bush, but I did get a good laugh by, what was it? Is it saying that we were talking about whether the voting age should be 16?
Or cursor, you got a good laugh with that, the cursor one.
But yeah, we were talking about making the voting age 16, and I said, you know, these guys want to reach out to the youth. No, David, not like that. And that got a good laugh.
Hey, let's have a look at old mate Simeon Brown. See, here's
old
another
mate,
thing.
Wee fella.
There's two kinds of people. They're the people that, if they're the smartest people in the room, they'd find another room. And then there's the people who think they're the smartest people in the room, but more often than not, they are not. This could be one of those situations. Simeon knows best, says One News. Transport Minister criticised for speed limit email. Now, I'm going to read you a bunch of this, but I think it's quite important because I want to remind us of something that this government is becoming more and more widely known for. Labor says an email to National Party supporters from Transport Minister Simeon Brown shows he will not consider public feedback on speed limits with an open mind. Now, to be fair, at the minute, this is Labor's claim. It's got to be fair. That's what they're saying. The government is proposing to roll back the previous government's speed limit reduction moves, which some parents and teachers say could risk the lives of children near schools. Others say it risks lives generally. Two options: risk the lives of children or risks everybody. They seem to be the two options they're putting out there. Some councils have also pushed back on the plans, while others, including the government, argue that the changes would be positive for the economy. If you can save that 8 seconds, that will make all the bloody difference. On Sunday, in an email to a National Party supporters list, Brown implored the recipients to submit in favour of a government bill to reverse Labor's blanket speed limit reductions. The proposal is for the government to create a new land transport rule aimed at ensuring when speed limits are set, economic impacts, including travel times and the view of road users and local communities, are taken into account alongside safety. Now, this is strange because it says that the views of road users should be taken into account, but Labor's claiming that's not actually what he wants to do. He doesn't want to take into consideration their views. Brown wrote in this email that the Green Party had asked supporters to submit against the plan, adding public consultation on the speed limit rule closed in less than a week. Kiwis this is a what is it, a long bow to draw? I don't know how he'd make this statement. But anyway, so what he said: Kiwis rejected Labor's blanket speed limit reductions, which were forcing motorists to drive at a snail's pace. I never saw that. I never saw that. What do you call it when you vote yay or nay? That word just popped out of my head. Referendum. I never saw that referendum, but apparently Kiwis have specifically rejected Labor's blanket speed limit reductions, Chewy. So I've learned something tonight. National was backing New Zealanders, quote unquote, by reversing those changes. This is what was written in the email. Requiring variable speed limits outside schools during pickup and drop-off times to keep young New Zealanders safe as they attended school. Public consultation on our draft speed limit rule closes on 11th July. I encourage you to make your voices heard to reverse Labor's blanket speed limit reductions across the country. The email provided a link to submit feedback on the proposed rule change. In that document, it said the role of the consultation was to give people and organisations affected by the changes an opportunity to present their views and to help ensure the new rule is sound, robust and implementable. Sorry, my dyslexia there. Labour Transport spokesperson Tangi Utikere said Brown's email suggested he was not interested in considering contrary views. So this is the point. He's putting out the email saying, we got to vote for this. And it makes it sound like he's not interested in the contrary views. In other words, not having an open mind. Safety and evidence should be at the forefront of any decision to increase speed limits, not a National Party email whip around to bolster their submission numbers. Local communities and councils are best placed to be making these sorts of decisions for their own patches. There is more commentary in here, which we won't get to right now, saying even though both of those parties, the Greens and National, are putting out emails contrary, maybe there is also a decision to be made, or at least a point to be made, that if you're in opposition, your job is to hold government to account. And both people campaigning, maybe, having the government also campaign for theirs might be something that's maybe not in the best interest. Finally, I'll just read this bit here as well. Not got science on the side as the heading. University of Canterbury professor of former Ministry of Transport Chief Science Advisor Simon Kingham said while he was not an expert on usual process for calling for submissions, he believed Brown's email showed the minister was concerned about public opinion not going in favour of the government's position. It's a really bad policy. Everything Brown has said hasn't given any suggestion he's listening to evidence or science. He's not got science on his side. Amongst Kingham's issues with the rule changes were that it was not a balanced approach, unquote, as the government said, but rather they favoured economics and productivity over road safety and increased emissions. Now, the one thing I wanted to bring to our attention after all of that, Chewy, and you might be surprised to be reminded about this, but remember when the Prime Minister of this country said this? On issues where we have got our 100-day plan and we've got legislation that are repealing, we think it's a huge waste of time for everyone to go off and create a regulatory impact statement. The statements basically model the impact change the rules will have on, for instance, the government books, a particular sector of business or a particular community group. The Prime Minister said, the government said, though there's no point officials writing them because his ministers simply won't read them. So when it comes to legislation now, Simeon Brown is not interested in hearing the opposing view from the public and is not interested in hearing the science and is not interested in the regulatory impact statement. And that's why this heading is called Simeon Knows Best. Now, Chewy, I've just read out War and Peace, so I think it's your turn to take over for a while.
Yeah, look, it's a theme, isn't it? All of these government ministers getting their own personal fiefdoms and just getting a little bit too much power. Yeah, like the argument here when it comes to speed limits seems to be some people may die, but then there is some nebulous effect to the economy if we just let people drive 10 or 20 kilometers an hour faster. And I heard this brought up, the effect to the productivity of the economy when it came to speed limits. And I want to go, cool. So lives aren't important unless we translate of the lost productivity of losing a worker or a couple of potential workers. You know, maybe these kids that die in these horrible crashes where a Ford Ranger runs over someone's car at 130 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
What's the lifetime productivity of those two dead children? What's the drain on the health budget in these car smashes? Like they just don't think about this. They've got the trucking lobby in their ear, or they're just being reactionary. This is something that Labour wanted to do. People don't like change, so it's pissed them off. So we're going to tell people that we're just gonna not do it if you vote for us.
Yeah,
I don't think it's coming from a place that's reasoned. I don't think it's coming from a place that is supported by evidence. I think, as I have always thought, that this is a government of vibes. And the vibes on letting people drive faster, the vibes are good. Not backed up by anything real, but the vibes are good. You know, if you're driving, I don't know, you have to be driving a really long distance for 20 kilometers an hour to actually make a meaningful difference.
Well, I mean, outside of school, it might be 200 meters, 100 meters. You know, that's it. That's the distance, because it's the zone starts here and it finishes there.
Like if you're talking about outside of schools, so you're weighing up like how much damage do you do to a child at 30 kilometers an hour versus 50? Doesn't sound like a 20 kilometer an hour difference in speed for a couple of 100 meters. How much does that mess up your day versus slamming into a kid at 50? You know? Months in hospital, death. My only criticism with the change in speeds around schools is some of the schools it's all the time, and some of the schools it's only certain times. And like, just make it a little bit clearer. I have no problem with 30 being the speed limit around a school. It absolutely fucking makes sense to me.
I was just going to do exactly what we just said. If you've got 400 meters, I'm being really generous, and your speed is 50 kilometers per hour.
How fast do you have to be going to make a kid split apart like a watermelon?
So if you're
Let's find out, Simeon.
400 meters is far bigger than the range, so I'm being generous. If you're doing 400 meters at 50 kilometers an hour, that takes 28.8 seconds. So if I make that 30 kilometers an hour, so it's 28.8 becomes 48. So it is literally 20 seconds over 400 meters at 20 kilometers per hour.
20 seconds, 28
20
seconds. My whole day's ruined.
Yeah.
Like the downstream effects of this, Pat, are massive.
I know. But, you know, there might be a million cars. Yeah, but all of those cars are individuals. That person in that van is only going to one place. And he's going to get there 20. In fact, you know what? You think about, I'm being really pedantic now, but I'm allowed to. I'm being really pedantic saying there might be lights at the end of that might actually save them no time. Because he might get through it 20 seconds quicker and then have to stop at the lights anyway. So it does feel like Labour bad. It does feel like nanny state. It does feel like we're going to make all these changes. It does going to feel like New Zealanders have voted against this rugby racing beer cars faster. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, this is what Simeon and Mark Mitchell think of ploughing through a school zone in 50.
Mark Mitchell.
I love this. Like, oh, I'm sorry. I love this photo. Because it looks like Mark Mitchell's either picking up or dropping him off at school.
Bye, Dad.
Oh, I'm terrible. I'm a bad person. You can't see the booster seat there. So that's
can't see the booster seat. Now, all right. Thank you for that, team. Now, we do have a little bit of maybe an apology, but an admission to make. We just didn't have time. People are asking us about the pies in Invercargill. Chewy.
Oh, yeah. So I love my pies. I fully had that in mind. But I'm kind of glad that we didn't because the
weird hangi.
The food, the hangi. Oh, and like I'm not a big person for seafood and that sort of thing, but I know a lot of people that are. Yeah. And I'm not going to describe it because you'll just die of jealousy.
Yeah. Yep. So sorry about that, team. Maybe we can refund you if you give us some super chat for pies. It'd be fair. Just let us know. Tough it, he says, man, this government drives me into the wall. Yeah, I think the up's crossed out, isn't it? That's pretty cool. You cross out your thing. And Peter says the science isn't hard, it's basic physics. Yeah. Look, what the government's going to say is, well, no, we want them to drive 30 during school hours, but, you know, we get used to driving a certain speed in a certain area, and then we just keep it that speed. So if what they're saying is, look, I had a conversation with someone today on the phone or on the text actually, but it was across the internet about a bill that had come in, and I said to them, do you guarantee I will not be charged for this? And that changed their tone incredibly quickly, and I got service differently at the end. So here's the question, Simeon. Do you guarantee that if you're going to have these changeable time zones, no child will be hit by a car doing 50 kilometers per hour? Because the survivability of a very small child at 50 versus 30 is immensely different. Do you give us that guarantee? As parents, as grandparents, as uncles and aunts, as children ourselves. I'm sure there's lots of 7-year-olds up listening right now. I know we go to bed with us. So, you know, and they won't be able to, obviously.
The other thing that I want to bring up here is when we're talking about speed limits around school and that sort of thing, think about what cars are like now these days. They're taller, they're heavier, they're probably a double cab ute with worse visibility over the front.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are things that have to be taken into account as well. Kids are more mobile. They might be on a scooter. They might nip out from between parked cars a lot quicker than you're expecting. How quick does your Ford Ranger stop? Does it have the safety systems of other cars? You know, it's all these things. Like this is when we call politicians lawmakers. This is what I hope that they consider. Are you making a law or a change to a policy or that sort of thing that is fit for the future, or are you rolling back something to the past that doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah, the theme, isn't it? Going backwards. There's a theme of the conversation yesterday at the Hui. It was like, you know, national, the cursive writing came up. National does literally want to take us back to the 1950s, 60s, or 70s. And this feels like another one. Those kids should just know their place and look both ways and everything will be fine no matter how fast. Why don't we make it 70 rather than 50? They'll learn. You know, one kid being hit, the rest will learn. That'll learn them. No. Anywho, let's have a chat because this is really interesting. I am concerned at the moment with the changes to News Hub and 3 News that we are dramatically seeing a drop-off in access to news. Dramatically seeing a drop-off.
Like instantly.
Yeah, and dramatically. So we thought, 3 News is there, and this, and this is that, and there, and that. This is fine. They'll replace. I'll show you, right, exactly what's happening. And there is a dramatic drop-off to access to news. I'll show you how. Let's first have a look at the thing that I'm being gentle because I don't want to be like a naysayer, but I'm always someone I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver. And I do have concerns for of course 3 News debuted strong because tons of people went, this is the first time in 40 years something's different. Let's have a look. So let's read the story and maybe give credit where it's due. This is from the weekend. 3 News posted a strong opening weekend with ratings for both Saturday and Sunday show up from those previous bulletins in the same slot. Of course you were. It was a brand new item and people wanted to know how this thing in first in 4 decades was going to function. Overnight, ratings from audience measurements tool Nielsen showed 340,000 people in the 5+ audience tuned in to watch the inaugural half hour, a whopping 89% more than News Hub Saturday night outing a week prior, and 32% increase on the same weekend last year. That's interesting in itself, isn't it? Look how much it's dropped off over 12 months. That's not the storyline, is it? The storyline isn't how much it's dropped off over 12 months. It's that we did good on the first night. It got a 19.3 in the target commercial 25-54 demographic, 3.5% up. The result was even more impressive, they say, right? Julian Peterson said, because they're up against the Warriors game and some other bits and bobs as well. 3 News is produced by Stuffed. Warner Brothers Discovery replaces 3 News Hub. It shut on Friday, etc., etc., etc. So look, fine. Maybe we did this. When we hit number 1 in the charts, we put it up and go, yay, we're number 1. And we ignore the other 93 days where we're number 3 through 15 sort of thing. So I get it. But in television in particular, and I mentioned spin-off TV earlier, they got given 800K or something for 20 episodes or whatever from New Zealand on air. And they started off after 7 days and it rated really well. And by the end of it, to be honest, Chewy, by the end of it, they were getting fewer viewers to their show than we get pretty much on each episode of this, which says something, because we're shithouse. So I would be more like about it's a good start, but we all know that there's lots of people checking us out. Come and talk to us in 6 months now. We'll see how we're going from here. So here's the concerning thing. We access, if you've followed us for very long, a lot of our news on YouTube, as does a certain demographic of the country, right? All on News Hub. Obviously, on YouTube. News Hub shut down last week, so there hasn't been anything for 4 days. But if you look at TVNZ's YouTube channel, they haven't had anything up for a week. They haven't had anything up for a week.
Wow. And
they were putting them up because watching the show, we get clips from them. And I'm not just doing this because they're making my life harder. You are, but that's not the main reason. Look, clips from everything, from breakfast, from, breakfast there, from the news. There's a 7 Sharp, and they put them up. And now that there's no News Hub doing it, there's no One News doing it. Not only that, maybe it's changed now. Let's go have a look live, shall we? But that video that I played earlier of Darleen Tana was not yet on the One News website. Like, let's put Darleen, I could be proven wrong here, but let's put Darleen Tana in here. DarleentAna and go enter. There you go, newest. So that story that we played tonight from One News is still not on the One News website. It's still not there. That's a massive story in New Zealand. It's still not on the One News website. Now, what's happened is there's been a dramatic drop-off. And I'm not saying news, it's still, One News is still there, 3 News, New 3 News is producing stuff, but the access to it in the space of a week has dropped off a cliff. I don't watch television, really. I watch heaps of YouTube. I get almost all my news from YouTube. New Zealand news has dropped off the YouTube platform. Other than us, of course. We're here. Hi. But mainstream media news has dropped off the YouTube platform. And I get it, right? Because what they're going to be doing is they're going to be saying, we want people to come to One News, the website.co.nz, because then they see our banners, they see our advertising, it's better. Yeah, okay, cool, fine. Darleen Tana's story is still not there. That video is still not there. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but I'm quite good mates with Petra Baggist. Done a lot of radio with her, done some bits and pieces with her. And I remember having a couple of ideas for television. And Petra responded to me by saying, but what does it look like? What are the images? You can't just, the big thing about television is you got to have moving pictures. It's television. That's the difference. Now, they've got a website with no moving pictures about one of the biggest news stories of the day, which is the Darleen Tana one. It's not there. There's no moving pictures on this television's website that's supplying news to the country. It's almost like they're going, this whole digital thing? Nah, you're just going to tune into 6 o'clock. We're going to go back to the 60s. It's a very strange situation. Now, 3 News, stuff.co.nz, they're allowed to do whatever they want. They're not a part of this, but they are actively driving people to their website, obviously, because they want clicks through there and they want banners to be seen there and that kind of stuff as well. But what it means is you haven't got YouTube is generally a hub, right? For information. There is no New Zealand news, mainstream news hub on YouTube anymore. And it's happened since News Hub disappeared, and One News has stopped doing it since News Hub disappeared. Thoughts, Chewy?
Yeah, it was very, very obvious that the foot has come off the gas because they don't have a functional opposition to the same level that they did. It is worrying. Again, it's the downstream effects of this, and this is why I was so pissed off with Melissa Lee, just completely not getting the seismic shift that was coming in our news organizations and how news is going to be disseminated out to the population. I think she was just rubbing her hands going, cool, less people to worry about. Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know what TVNZ are doing. They could be filling the vacuum, but they don't seem to be.
Just because I like to be fair, I can see someone in the chat saying 3 News is on YouTube. 3 News, News Hub comes up. Like, happily show it. I mean, because I want to know where it is. So, where's 3 News? I mean, have I done it wrong? That's what their name is, right? 3 News. And and I'm not pulling back on that. Even if it is up there, there's no question that there is a question. My accusation is TVNZ has seen that they don't need to provide to YouTube anymore because News Hub's gone and no one's providing to YouTube anymore, or at least not like they were. So they've just stopped doing it because they want people to go to their website. I'll look up stuff. Maybe it's in there under stuff. Okay, so there's stuff. I mean, there's some videos there for sure. Oh, yeah, there's some there on the stuff one. Okay. Well, that's terrible branding, by the way, stuff. You're calling it 3 News. Yeah, okay. Stand corrected. Maybe that's why they've only got 37 views on one of the biggest news stories of the day.
Yeah, it is weird. You'd usually jump on making sure the search algorithm is going to deliver people that are going to be looking for it, and they haven't. They've missed that trick.
Can I just add one more thing, right? Because I was going to talk about this, and I can see, look, I'm on their page now, so I'll show you where it is. This story here was an exclusive for stuff. So it's not that they're not doing good news. This is a terrible story. Have you heard this story, Chewy? This is the guy who got one punched in Christchurch. I read this in the Herald.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know the full story, there was some douchebag of a father that wanted to teach his 7-year-old son a lesson because he wouldn't get off the swings and slides when he wanted him to go home. So what did the douchebag father do? He left to teach his son a lesson. The son then freaked out, crying, panicked. This lovely gentleman, grandfather, 60-year-old visitor from India, helped the boy out. And when the father eventually came back after he had taught his son a lesson, this gentleman was holding the boy's hand because he was crying, looking for his dad. The father got all grumpy and angry and took his son and this is the worst part, and drove off, had a chat with the missus at home, and then came back to the park, found this guy, punched him in the face. He fell over, hit his head, died. Now, I get that we don't have murder 1, 2, 3 in New Zealand, and that murder has to have an intention behind it, but this feels way worse than manslaughter, Chewy. To give 3 News their credit, first of all, even with their Zoom background there, they're doing good work. They're doing good work without question. But I did want to use this as a chance to also talk about this story. That feels way worse than a manslaughter. You think manslaughter is accidental. Yeah, okay, he might not have meant to kill him, but the action of leaving the scene and then coming back and attacking the guy and then leaving the scene again. Whatever the most serious situation for manslaughter is, this breaches that bar in my ill-informed opinion.
Yes, we're not Judge Pat and Chewy just yet.
No.
As far as the stories that they're doing as well, like Samantha Hayes did an amazing story about the gang patches in Black Power, which is an incredible piece of reporting on a story and that sort of thing. They're doing worthy work. It's just it's very new and nobody's worked out what the hell's going on. So I should be able to type in 3 News and it take us straight to it.
So that's
and TVNZ should be
cop.
continuing to upload content at the same rate that they were doing before 3 News went down.
That's probably look, fair cop. I said they weren't there and they are. I guess that their algorithm's not working very well because, like I said, that clip about that man said 128 views. It should have had several thousand by now. But TVNZ it is my honest held belief, my humble conjecture that TVNZ, as you said, Chewy, has taken the foot off the accelerator because News Hub's gone. Because we want access to news, it seems that they want us to come to their website. 2 different things. Anywho, anything else? Do you want to actually, you got any thoughts around the case as well? It's just like, holy crap.
Oh, look, I think it's like the dude went home and came back. It's premeditated. His missus called the police on it. He went to a friend's house and said what he'd done. Like it's reprehensible. Like shit dadding to start with, and then a massive overreaction after that. Massive. But just like, fuck's sake. People need to fucking chill out.
Thank you very much for the super chats. Ruru has keep the money contribution to Virgin. Thank you. Okay, that was about the pies, wasn't it?
I will promise, hand on heart, it will still go to pies.
Okay, there you go, done. So many horrible things, says Anna. I feel like it's on purpose so no one can keep up. By the way, late fee. Thanks for the comment, Anna. Rachel says, check out Tama Portaka with Mihi Forbes. Oh, wow. I will do. And actually, look, again, to give a bouquet to 3 News, it's amazing seeing Paula Penfold on there because she's obviously an investigative journalist for reals, doing like shorter form but deep dives. Look, so yeah, no criticisms of them really, just ponderings about how maybe you just keep that champagne cork in just for a few months. That's all I'm saying. Jackson says at this rate, at this rate, I might as well get my old wireless out from Jackson Media.
It's time to invest in newsprint again. So we can all read it on the train.
And thank you to, it looks like Vicious Technologies, is that right? Super sticker. We can't see super stickers in this system, but I'm sure if you're on YouTube right now and you've seen it, you've seen it. All right, Chewy. Hey, it's a good first night back. First night back. It's like we were talking about this yesterday about how many of these we've done and how long we've been doing this for. So yeah, first night back. Feels like we've been off for a week. And it's literally been 24 hours. But since last Thursday.
Oh.
No. And look, can we please ask political parties to stop bloody having breaking news on a Friday? Just stop it. It makes our lives so much more difficult because we have to then play catch up the week after. Also want to remind people, and I did get around to it, and I'm sure that you guys heard about this yesterday if you tuned in. Hey Musos, how would you like $500? We've got all the ideas up here. We're looking to pay an artist for their time to replace our theme song, which at the moment is made by AI, which we love the theme song. So thank you for making it for us. No criticism of the theme song, but we just figure if we're going to be the kind of people that talk about how AI is replacing everything, especially in the arts, then maybe we should put our money where our mouths are and say, well, let's check out. Oh, actually, speaking of, I haven't given the numbers for the donation we made to Cancer Society. We'll do that tomorrow night. So we thought we should put our money where our mouths are, and we offered $250 for someone to design us a new theme. And someone in the chat said they'll match that donation, so it's now $500. So I've put a few stipulations in here. Someone asked me today, does it need to have lyrics? And I said, not necessarily, but I think it would be better with it. Should we use the words from the current one? I'm like, no, the best thing you can do is to make something that relates to us and who we are. And if you know us at all, then just, work with it. And the only thing I want to make really clear is we're going to go to the end of July, which is 3 weeks. But please be aware that this is a competition, which means if 10, 100, 1,000 people, we're only going to be giving the money to one. So you got to be aware that whatever time and effort and energy you put into it may or may not earn you the first prize. Does that make sense? I don't want
the
people
accolades or the groupies.
But we will, I imagine we'll play several of them because we'll maybe put it out to the public and see what you guys think once we get them. Any questions, you can fire them up there or get us on Big Hairy News. So $500, it's like, maybe even if you are people who don't love us, you won't get involved if you don't love us. But $500 is $500, in these hard times, and then all you need to do is sign up to be a patron after that and give it all back to us. Is that fair, Chewy? Is that how we do it?
Yes. Yeah,
Something
absolutely. I'm aware of a Scar cover being a Scar theme song being done.
Okay.
I know of I think approximately about 5 people have reached out to me and said that they're currently working on something, and I cannot wait.
I wonder if we can find some rabid ACT supporter to make us a really good one. It's the way we lure them over to the light side. Just saying, and they won't want to pay tax on that, so. Because that's what ACT about.
Nobody said that they're doing like a new metal, or maybe even baby metal. That'd be good.
The other thing about it is the suggestion also is if we can get like a 30-second version and then like a 3-minute version, because then we can use the 30 for the intro and the 3-minute for the outro. But we'll see. We'll play it. But yeah, I think last chat for the night is from Lurchify. Thank you for the super chat. Change of topics. When Celux was all indignant about allegations of Russia bombing hospitals, does he wonder how Gazans feel? Yeah, we haven't even touched on that, have we? Children's Hospital flattened in Ukraine. So it's like
kids with cancer lined up out on the footpath. They hit that hospital with a hypersonic missile. GPS targeted.
I was about to say it's a good comment, Lurch, but I don't really want to make it feel like it's a good comment. You know what I mean? It's a wise comment. We should do some more looking at that and maybe pick up on that tomorrow about the hypocrisy between. I'm on what all those conservative American politicians. Or mind you, they all like Putin now these days. Apparently, something's happened about hospitals being flattened in Ukraine versus hospitals being flattened in Gaza. I wonder if there's any difference here. All right, I was about to push play on the theme tune. The theme tune, but is there anything else you want to add before we head off?
No, I think we've covered off everything tonight.
Yeah.
Everything. The sitch as it is.
The world is solved. We've solved the world. It's all over. Thanks again for the guys who asked us down to Invercargill. That was wicked, man.
Had a blast.
Love you guys.
And sure, they got the news. Big Harry style, keeping it loose. News feeders, where the politics play. They bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess the cake to bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at the mighty voice. Pat and chew, they'll make the right choice.
Thanks, team. If you're enjoying what we do and you want to be a part of us, be one of these fabulous people on our credits, and I know there's a couple of errors in there. I'm working on it. Dyslexic brain doesn't like lots of repetitive things. Then head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Thanks so much. I've got a couple of patrons sign up this evening. You'll get to go on the credits probably in the weekend is when I update them. But thanks for being a part of what we've done tonight. Loved being with you, and I'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Chewy.
Cheers, man. See you tomorrow.
Have a good one.